What's up? Today I'm bringing you a jewelry tutorial. I felt like there was a gap in the Octane tutorial market which I could steal. Anyways, I thought I would do some jewelry renders for my portfolio because I realized I actually don't have much. I can do a lot in Octane, but I actually don't have much showing in my portfolio. So lately I've been working hard on getting out stuff so I can actually have stuff so I can so I can actually have stuff to display, so I can show people I can do things, because I see a lot of job applications and stuff like that where I can do it, but I can't show them that I can do it, and I ended up losing like all those opportunities. So I've been working really hard on my portfolio recently, and I think it was yesterday or the day before, I decided I wanted to do some jewelry. So I made this. It took less than a day, and I was able to render out some jewelry for my portfolio. And I thought I'd make a tutorial on how to do this because it came out looking out pretty good, and a lot of people were a bit curious on how I went about lighting the whole thing and getting a studio sort of look with my jewelry renders. So I thought I would do a tutorial. I'm not gonna make the whole project because I feel like that's a lot of unnecessary time. I'll just add an extra 40 minutes. So I'm gonna break down the project to show you. I'll show you how it's made and stuff, but I'm not gonna go and make it with you because that's just unnecessary. So yeah, so we'll start off with the project. So you'll see here I have a cube, and I just beveled the edges, and that's now my softbox for the lighting. And I just inverted the normals. You can see they're facing inwards. So that gives a very nice softbox lighting, because if you don't have one, I'm using 3 different lights, which I'll get into now, but I'll show you what the lighting situation looks like without a softbox and then with one. So we'll start off with the lighting and stuff, and then we'll get into the materials and things like that. Modeling is fairly simple, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But anyway, this is what the lighting looks like with just 3 lights. And if you add in a softbox, all the light reflects all around the scene, and it really fills up your scene and fills up some of the very dark areas which you would have in your scene. So that's where having your own softbox really helps. I've had people ask me how I went about my lighting, which I'll explain. So here I'm using 3 different lights. I have a key light, which is at the top here. And then I have a rim light and a fill light. Now, they're not actually doing what they're supposed to, but it's good. It's just like good, how can I say, good tagging almost. It's just, these are just words so I can know which lights I'm using. This was initially an actual rim light, which was kind of rotated around this way so that it could sort of separate the object from the background, but eventually I just moved it to the side. So these are pretty much 2 fill lights and then a key light on top. And that's pretty much all I used. Recently I haven't actually been using HDRIs for my lighting. I've been using actual proper lighting and stuff like that. I was meant to do 2 tutorials on videos, but the clients didn't want me to. So I'm gonna have to make some portfolio videos and then do some breakdown on those videos, because I actually haven't gone into video editing at all, and that's pretty much all I do these days. So yeah, anyway, enough rambling. So the lighting, I printed out a book called Digital Lighting and Rendering, which was published in 2000. So these techniques are used from like decades back. So you can't complain and say, oh, I can't do this because I have Octane. How do I do this in the standalone renderer? I'm using techniques from 2000, from like 2 decades ago. So you can't complain about software in the situation. And I basically have, I'll break down the lights one by one. That's the wrong button. No, I'll break down the lights one by one. Here I have, I'll start off with this light. I have a fill light, which is basically just a light on the left. Gives some nice lighting over here. The focus point is right there, so the lighting over the situation is perfect. It also lights the side here as well, which is nice. I'll get into the modeling of the diamonds and stuff as well. Then we have the rim light, which is on the right side, which gives some nice lighting on the rims here, and then also on the side as well, on the side of the watch. Then we have a key light, which is basically just a light on the top, which gives some overall extra definition to the whole thing. So if we put them all together, you have 3 different lights, one lighting on the right side, one lighting on the left side, and one lighting on top. And then you add in the softbox, and then the light reflects everywhere, and then it just gives a really nice render in the end. So you can see there's no holes in this actual cube. And then I have a camera sitting inside here. The camera is like sitting inside there, and it's pointing at the scene. So if I can get rid of the softbox, actually, then it's pointing at the scene like that. And that's pretty much how I came up with that. So yeah, that's the lighting side of it. I'll get into the camera settings quickly since it's fast. Focal length of 70. Here I'm using 36 f-stop. I noticed a lot of product photography and stuff are actually very clear. What they do is they take a photo at different lengths, and then they just combine them all together in post, and then you have a very clear render, very clear final image. But I figured if I don't have any depth of field, that won't look realistic. So I added a bit of depth of field just so there's like slight blurriness, so it just looks a bit realistic. If it was perfect, then it wouldn't look realistic, even though actual final images of photographs and stuff do come out clear. But yeah, so I just added a slight amount, and then I just added some bloom as well, just a slight amount of bloom, just to give a bit more realism. And that's pretty much the camera settings. I went for 1920 by 900. My final image is actually really big, but I was cropping it down for Instagram. So yeah, we'll get into the render settings. I went path tracing 10,000 originally, but I would only go for 3,000 if this was a standard renderer. Standard render. Specular depth 100 because of all the reflections and stuff. It just gives a nice clear glass. And that's pretty much it. I'm going with adaptive sampling because I don't want it to spend hours and hours rendering the background when it doesn't need to. So adaptive sampling really helps with it rendering what it actually needs to in the scene. So yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much it for the camera and render settings. I guess we'll get into the modeling now. So let me just hide this. The modeling is fairly simple as well. All I really did is use a cylinder like this, as you can see. Oops, you can see it's a cylinder. Just take a cylinder, you cut off the sides, and then you just extrude it in, and then extrude it in some more, add some lines so you get some sharper edges when smoothing it. And I went for 16 rotation segments, and that's pretty much it. And then you just put it inside of a smoother, subdivision smooth, and then once that's done, you get that. Then I have a cloner with some diamonds going around. The diamond itself, I actually watched a tutorial. There's a tutorial called Diamond in Octane. If I was doing a whole modeling tutorial, I would explain how to make this, but I'm not. I'm just doing a breakdown. So I'm not going to get into that, and this thing's freezing a bit, so you're going to have to bear with me here. So you can see the diamond. It's a fairly simple shape. There's actually a tutorial on this, and if I can find it, that means you can find it. I hate it when people tell me, oh, I can't find Octane tutorials and stuff like that. Well, then how did I learn all this stuff, you know? So if I can find it, you can find it. I'll do an extra favor, and I'll actually link it in the description for you if you're going to complain. So that's it. And then all I did is in the font tag, you just make the angle 0, because then you'll get these nice reflections. You can even see in the live view, in the viewport here, what the sort of effect that you get in your render in terms of reflections and stuff. So that's pretty much it. And then I just put it inside a radial cloner, and then I cloned it all the way around this object here. And that's pretty much what you get. And then I put that inside of a Boolean, and then I used those clones to cut a hole in it. Then I just duplicated the whole thing and then just pushed it out a bit further. So there's a bit of a gap here, as you can see here. There's a bit of a gap between the diamond and the actual object. And then it just sits nicely. Nothing's colliding. You're not going to have some weird artifacts and stuff when rendering. That's pretty much it. So if I pop everything back in here, you can see, and this one is an interesting one as well. The modeling of this one is a bit more tricky, but it's still very basic. You can see here, just the same concept. I have like 7 different rings, which I've made. but it's the same. I just went creatively and just added variation to all of them. Here all I did is I just extruded the inside parts and then pushed them down a bit, and then did the same diamond trick with cloners, and that's pretty much what I did there as well. So it's fairly simple with the modeling. We'll close this project quickly, and I'll just show you the rest of my rings because I have quite a few. Here you can see I have different variations. This is the Instagram project for the ones I use for posting on Instagram. And here you can see I have different variations. Pretty much just came up with different ones for the variations. And I use this reference image at the start over here. So I made this ring, and this ring, and then I just sort of adapted it and made some variations for myself. And that's pretty much it for the modeling. So we'll get into the texturing now. Landscape, and then we can close this one. So the texturing side of things, let's just solo these two. All I really have is I have two red materials and 2 silver ones. And then I have an extra silver one for the displacement, which I'll show you just now. And then I have a specular material for the diamonds. And then I have a diffuse material for the dirt, which is just for adding overlay dirt and stuff on. And then I have the 2 floor materials, which I'll also get into. So for the red one, let's just load this in so you can see. It's a metal material, so no diffuse. Index of 8. For the specular, I just went and loaded a polygon material. If I haven't made any of these textures, they're from polygon.com, and I just use metalness steel brushed texture, and then I put it inside a colorizer to get this really nice red look. And this render really looks nice as well, just because of the colors I used. Like a lot of 3D rendering, a lot that goes into getting nice renders doesn't actually have to do with your software and your actual render. It has to do with composition, the colors you're using, all sorts of other things that have nothing to do with your actual software. A lot of people ask me how I get really nice looking renders, and I've been using Octane for probably half a year, if not about half a year to a year now. So it's not like I've been using this for years and I suddenly have these amazingly renders because of Octane. You can improve your renders on things like colors, just using basic color changes. So this render really looked nice because of the colors I was using. So I went for a very nice red one. I just pumped this inside of the specular. I used the colorizer to color it. And then I used a steelness brush thingy for my specular. The roughness, I have some fingerprints going on, and this is the wrong one. So the one you're seeing now is actually the one I just switched to, but on the silver ones, on the ones that aren't reflective, I have some fingerprints going on. It's very subtle, you'll barely notice it, but it adds that effect. So the one that's actually here is the one that I'm on now, and I did the same thing. I just put a steelness, steel brushed one, except I used the glossiness version here, and in here I added some contrast, because you'll see if you just do the default one, it looks plastic. So this is the default settings, and it just looked horrible. It looked like plastic. It almost looked like rubber actually, and it didn't look good. So I had to add some contrast to give it that metal-y feeling. So if I just go and replace these things, or actually forgot what that setting was. Let me just undo it. Cool. And then that's 10. If I replace these settings, you'll see that everything comes back to normal and everything looks nice and dandy. Maybe I should just get rid of this. Oh, it's already off. Okay. Everything looks nice and dandy. So here in the bump map, I have 2 scratched materials. Surface imperfections, I just toned down the power a lot, and then I changed most of my textures. Probably all of them are on box mode, just so that I can move them around and edit them and stuff really well, and it doesn't affect the actual UV tag, which is nice. I just turned on the power, and then I just overlaid that with another scratch material where I did the same thing, turned down the power, scaled it down, and then that's it for the bump map. For the normal map, I'm just using the same stainless steel brushed, except I'm using the normal map version for it, and that's pretty much it for this texture. And then the red one, and then the one that's not shining, all I did is I just swapped out the roughness channel here, the steel one, with some fingerprints. That's pretty much all I did for those two. And then I put this inside of a mix material with a diffuse material, which is the dirt, a white diffuse material, and the red one I just put that inside of a mix material, and then I used some dirt wipes just to add some very, very slight spectacles of dirt, and I turned up the gamma for some contrast, and then I turned down the power and scaled it down and stuff like that, and that's pretty much it for that. For the silver, I did the same thing as I did with the red, so it's pretty much the same. It's just the silver doesn't have a colorizer inside the specular material, so it turns out to be silver, not red, so that's the same thing there. This displacement here, I went and created that inside of Photoshop. So here you'll see I have a displacement pattern, which I went and made. So you pretty much go and take a cube. If I can go and get rid of all of these. So you take a rectangle, and then you go and add in a stroke like so. So this is a stroke on there, and then it gives that very nice force that it's almost like a inner globe, except it's like in all directions. You duplicate it a bunch of times like so into a group, and then you just move it around until it's tileable. Invert it, you create a pattern out of that, and then you go into a new project. You apply the pattern onto a color fill. So if I want to go and make this really wide as well, it'll just update automatically because it's a pattern like that. And then you go and add a gradient on top of it, you save it, and then that's what you end up with here. So the reason why I added a gradient is because here you can see on the edge here, it sort of fades off. So if I can get up close, you can see that it fades off slightly. It doesn't just like cut off, there isn't like this harsh edge, it like fades off, and I noticed that here, or it's not there actually, I'm lying. Oh yeah, I did. Here it sort of faded off a bit, and then I sort of just adjusted it. I made it fade off even more in the render, so it fades off nicely here. And that's what this gradient is doing over here, because the black parts are flat, the white parts will be extruded. So as it goes to black, it goes flatter, and then it just fades off here, and it's not that just like, it's not just cut off immediately, which I thought was a really nice effect. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that texture. The dirt is just a white diffuse material. The diamond, I went for, you can Google these values and they'll give you the index for a diamond. And then I also used dispersion in my final render, which really helped. It really gave that really nice final realistic effect to the diamonds. Like some people commenting my diamond material looks perfect, and that's because of this dispersion here. It gives that really nice final realistic look in your diamond. It does take a while to render though, so I usually keep it unticked with the test renders, and then in the final I just tick it on and then render it out. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the whole thing. Yeah, the floor is also fairly simple, which is basically the softbox. I'll go and solo this. The softbox, I just added a why is this so? The softbox, I just add, this is all to scale by the way, so it's a bit hard to like navigate and stuff around because it's all like to real world scale. I just added a glossy material with roughness, and then I went and soloed out this piece here, and then I duplicated it, and then I added a gradient inside the roughness channel here, so it fades from rough to not rough in the middle, and that just adds that really nice reflection on the end. So here, if I go and look at this render here, you'll see that it's reflective there, and then it fades into roughness, and that's pretty much just a gradient, a circular gradient that goes from the middle all the way to where the bevel starts, and that's pretty much it to get that nice reflection there. And then it sort of fades off into roughness. Here it does look a bit off and it actually looks incorrect, but it's fine. And then once you hit render, you pretty much come out with an image like this. Obviously I spent a whole day working on these different rings and positioning them, composition, lighting, rendering, and colors and stuff like that. But yeah, if you spend enough time, you'll end up with a render like that. So that's pretty much the whole project, really. I've gone through everything. There's not really much else to it. But yeah, I thought I would do a jewelry render tutorial, show you guys how I did it at least. Then on any tutorials out there on jewelry, so I thought I might as well do them. And I want to do one on video production and stuff like that, but none of my clients want me to show off how I make these things, which is annoying. So I need to make a portfolio project for you guys, and then I'll try and do one. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, if I missed anything out, you feel free to ask. I'll answer your questions. By the way, if you want to see my renders, I do post them on Instagram. So you can find me at Arthur Visuals. I'll put a link inside the description. And that's where I'm most active, and that's where I post all my renders and stuff. You can find these renders there. I'll put these up on my website soon. But right now they're on Instagram. So if you want to see what I'm doing on a daily basis and stuff, you can follow me on there. So hope you guys enjoy. Have a great day. Goodbye.